Well, hello and welcome to the Church Office podcast. My name is Jon Wright. I'm part of the team here at the Church Office and I'm the operations manager at Frinton Free Church. So it's a great joy today to welcome you to our Admin and Ops podcast, where we talk about the work of ministry behind the scenes, whether that's structure, people, processes. We love to talk about it all, and we seek to serve the church by helping to think through some of these issues. So if you haven't already, do check out some of our other episodes and topics on your favourite streaming platform and on YouTube. And it's also a great joy to have special guests join us. And today we get the great joy of having Penny Clarke, who, amongst other things, is on the team at UCAN. So thank you, Penny, for having time to talk to us today.
Hi, John. Thanks for inviting me.
So Penny, we've connected a couple of times at UCAN events. I've been incredibly grateful for the work that the UCAN team does to support church operations across the country. So thank you for all you do to contribute towards that. Before we get going, we need to give a shout out to Gavin and the team at Church Suite for sponsoring the podcast. Their platform supports thousands of churches across the UK, as well as the wider church across the world. At the Free, we've just moved to podcast to Church Suite, and it's been a game changer for the way that we get organised, the way that we communicate with our members, organise the rotas, and the way that we support our kids and small group ministries. There's a lot to love, and it's very clear that they have a real heart for the church. And Penny, I believe you've used Church Suite as well in various different roles.
Gosh, we've been using Church Street for, I've used it probably about 8 years now, I think, if that's as far back as when it was. I first came across them at a conference. Where else do you find great resources? I've used Church Street, took our church, King's Church in Bolton, onto Church Street pretty much straight away. Again, game changer in terms of keeping in touch with people. My role was in finance, so very much using it for financial features, giving, all of those kind of things, events. It has just been a great way to organise. But what I love the most, I think, about it is when you meet with Gavin or any of the other team, you can tell they're not just selling software. They really understand how church works. And it created by pastors for people who are trying to do ministry. I just think it's just such a great tool that we can use.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think that's a really good way of summarising it up. So Penny, just in case there's anyone who doesn't know who you are, what you do, quickly introduce yourself. What is Penny? What is Penny?
I find myself asking that question every day. I think I need a t-shirt in the morning to say who I am today. So I work for BRF Ministries. I'm head of finance and operations at BRF Ministries. If you don't know who BRF Ministries are, that's probably our fault, but you might have heard of the likes of Messy Church, Parenting for Faith, Anna Chaplaincy, some of our ministries that we host and resource. Our aim is to resource the church, providing discipleship resources for all ages and stages of people in their walk, in their journey. So that's really exciting. We're going through times of change, new systems. We didn't bring in Church Suite, but we did bring in Expense Plus, all of our friends who we often refer to. So we've got really good new structures, systems, processes, ideas going on there. So with my operations background and my finance background, put the two together and it works pretty well. I'm on the team at UCAN, so I'm involved in sort of the board stuff, and then also very involved in the ILM, which is a course that we ask church managers, or we offer to church managers or church ops directors, where they can just learn biblical principles, but also real practical application of not only the biblical principles, but real world principles and management tools, etc. The course is entitled Managing Church Well, which is a great course. I know there's a similar, different course, but another course, on church management within the church office. I guess you need to look at them and see which one's right for you in your context, but I'm very involved in that. I teach for Manchester University on their MBA programme. I teach for Missio Dei, which is the Assemblies of God Theological College, looking at biblical governance and stewardship and, again, management. And then I'm also part of the church health team for AOG, the Assemblies of God, where we're helping churches to get healthy, become more healthy, because healthy churches enable great ministry. So I've got a real portfolio. So last week had my AOG hat on, but of course at the conference I can't help but talk to people about UCAN and BRF as well at the same time. So very involved. really involved in my local church as well. I was the ops director there for 10 years, moved to a different role outside my church, but still within kingdom, kingdom building, um, working for BRF. And I still help with the operations side of things in church as well. So, yeah, there you go. That's a little bit of what Penny does, who Penny is. Married to Jed, 4 children. Um, Two boys still living at home, and we have just, as you already alluded to, moved house. So anybody who has just gone through that process, I sympathise with you.
That's incredible. I mean, even more so, thank you for finding time to join with us today. And yeah, just thank you for all that you do across the kingdom, all the way. And I don't quite know how you fit it all in, but you obviously do, and you're doing a great job. So thank you. So we're here today with your particular hat to think about UCAN.
Mhm.
And so just for anyone that doesn't know, what is UCAN? How did you first get involved with UCAN?
Well, UCAN is a UK Church Administrators Network. It's been around for quite a long time. It does exactly what it says on the tin. It's a network for church administrators, not just administrators. We really uh, we don't like the use of the expression just administrators. At the end of the day, the spiritual gift of administration is something which people are anointed with. I know you fully operate in your gift there as well, John. But as I say, it's a network. How did I get involved? When I moved from my secular role um, into working for the church, I had a bit of a shock, quite frankly, because where I'd worked previously, I'd been part of a huge institute of chartered accountants. Then I worked in academia. So again, you've got loads of people around you who are speaking the same language. Moved into church world, and it's a whole new language and a whole new way of doing things. And we're talking maybe about 15 years ago. So the systems and structures and processes are not quite as they are now. Um, and all of a sudden, I thought, I need to find a new tribe. I need to find some people who get me, who understand that spiritual gift of administration, although at the time I wasn't really aware of what that really meant. But then I suppose I looked around and went, who were church administrators? Who do I connect with? Found UCAN and started going to a couple of conferences, just reading the resources, so many resources on there. And obviously it's changed quite a lot since then. And it's grown and it's multiplied, and the network's there, but the network exists to make sure that administrators have got people to communicate with, to be in network with, to be in relationship with, because it can be a really lonely place being in church administration. I had the privilege of working in quite a large church, which had a relatively big staff team. But some of the administrators we come across, they might be the single administrator in a parish of 3 churches. Their line manager is a vicar who has had no management training, no administration experience. They're all just muddling through. So it's great to have people to bounce ideas off, to ask advice from, to get wisdom and guidance from, and ultimately fellowship with as well.
That's really helpful. Thank you. And I certainly reflect on when I was initially stepping into church operations and during that interview process, like you, just thinking about where's the support network. Actually, you
Yeah.
could be fooled into thinking, um, it's quite a niche being in church operations. Actually, there's lots of people across the country doing very similar jobs. Each church is different.
Yeah,
Each church has its own uniqueness,
of course it is.
but how refreshing it was then to go to that first UCAN conference after I first stepped into that role and talk to people in similar sorts of positions, doing similar sorts
Yeah.
of roles, and think actually there are people across the country that are sort of tackling similar things that I'm doing. So
I think as well, when you face a challenge, you need to find somebody who understands the same challenge as you, but then also somebody who's going to celebrate your successes, where you realize you've done something and you sort of might turn to somebody in church and they've no idea what it took for to make that happen or for that event to come off. You speak to another church operations manager and they go, "Yeah, I get your pain. Totally get it. Well done. Keep going."
that's a brilliant example. No, that's really good. And so you very helpfully touched upon some of the various different things that UCAN does, the conference and some of the small group stuff. But so in terms of just an outline of the different ways that people could get involved with UCAN, what does that look like?
So a lot of those things I've commented on, they're probably more the high profile, big ticket items. Um, At grassroots, we're a network for church administrators and ops people. So local groups are incredibly important to us. We've got two wonderful people work in the office, and their role is to engage with the network and reach out to administrators and connect them. So a local group would be regionally organised, where it doesn't matter what your denomination is. If you're a church administrator, you're welcome at that group. There might be a topic to discuss. It might just be a cup of tea and a chat. Sometimes they have to go online because it makes sense, in terms of timings, etc. But having that mutual support and the network of people, so that's the first touch point, if you like. There's a website that's got loads of resources on there. We do tapas training, so bite size training for church administrators, and then we do something called a virtual roundtable for church managers. The reason we distinguish between the two is because they are different roles and they do have different challenges and different decision making authority and all of those kind of things. It's not a ranking, it's just they're different roles, aren't they? So the roundtable yesterday, for example, we had a roundtable where we were looking at how to manage well the relationship between shepherds and stewards, but essentially church management and spiritual leadership. And there is a tension, but let's name the tension, understand why the tension exists, and then say, and what's our part to play in how do we manage that and how do we do it well? So the roundtable's there every other month. There's usually a guest speaker in for that one. We have the Work of a Church Administrator, which is a distance learning course. We have the in-person course, which is the Managing Church Well. We have altitude training, which is looking a lot more about how internally, how do I manage myself? How do I show up? How do I how do I best relate with other people and understand why they might be responding in a particular way? So altitude training. We have, I know this is like the shopping list. I'm trying to memorize the menu here. We have every other year, we have residential conference, which is coming up in June this year. And then the alternate year, we have a D conference. Last time, I think the one you went to, did you go to both of them? We had one in the north and one in the south.
I was in Manchester actually.
I was going to say Manchester, very close to me. I'm in
It was
Bolton.
brilliant.
Yeah, it was. Well hosted, thank you, in Sale. And yeah, so we have that conference. The conference usually has keynote speakers, loads of worship, which is great. I know that's close to your heart as well. But just great to work to see what the church in action looks like, because when you've got people from different kinds of church context, it's so great to worship alongside and realize that it doesn't matter how we do things, God's still God and He's still in charge. So the other thing I've not mentioned is CWN. CWNchurchworkers.net. That is our HR offering. So churches can sign up to be a member of CWN, and then they have access to. See, this isn't my area. I'm not speaking too well about this one. Are you a member of CWN? It's HR resources, and then people at the end of the telephone if you've got any HR queries. I belittled that into two sentences. I'm sure it's way more than that.
But I think the real encouragement is actually the breadth and depth of the offering that UCAN has, and
Yeah.
the different encouragement that you can get from the community and networks that are surrounding those various topics and expertise. And it's I certainly know from my experience there's gifts that I may be bringing into the role, but then there's things that I need loads of support from the local team around me, but
Mm.
also then the wider network of things that I've kind of just not encountered before, or need further support. So I think, covering everything from HR, through to the some of the management and leadership and all of that stuff. It's really encouraging that you can have offerings for all of that stuff.
I think one of the things that people often say is um, of most help to them is the Facebook group, because you can just literally put a post on the Facebook. I've not come across anything like this. Has anybody else seen it? And within minutes, you can guarantee there'll be two or three people. Yeah, I've done this. Shall I send it to you? Shall I send you that document or policy? Or, yes, this was a struggle we had, and this is how we resolved it. So it's just solutions focused, solutions driven, but also completely peer support and peer network enabled.
I've been so encouraged on the Facebook group, on the local WhatsApps. Actually, just how willing people are to step in and say, "Oh, I've got a template for that," or "I'll
Yeah.
hop on a Zoom call and I'll quickly give you a once over of what we've done." And that's a real encouragement at a time where you're maybe feeling a bit bogged down with a particular document or a particular policy, and actually you need that encouragement and that support from people around you. So that's great. That's really good. So
I also think one of the things that's really helpful is if somebody says, we're thinking of changing our finance system, let's say, you know, anybody got any ideas? And you're always going to get a really balanced viewpoint because you're going to get people who've got different, some use Zero, some use Expense Plus, some use Sage, whatever it is, you're just going to get a really balanced viewpoint there, which just enables some of the decision making to be done more expeditiously, doesn't it?
that's a really good point. And the truth is actually in a lot of churches we there are things like Church Suite, which are great and they're designed for churches, but we're also using commercial software, commercial things that aren't necessarily directly geared up for church. And there's an element that we need to adapt to and
Mhm.
reinterpret and rework. And having other churches that have been through that process and done some of that thinking can really kind of speed things up and make it efficient.
Yeah.
So all of those things sound great, Penny, and I'm interested in joining. What's the process of joining UCAN? How do I find out more? Um, what does that look like?
I think I'd just head over to the website. There will be buttons you can click on that will enable you to join up straight away. The joining mechanism is using Church Suite, obviously. But then you probably want to speak to somebody, you probably want to speak to either Maria or Verity, um, who will, put an inquiry in. They will get back to you and they will talk through whether this is something which is what's the beneficial level to enter at? Is it the administrator level or is it the church manager level? Because there's always disparity over different names and titles and things, aren't there? So how would you most benefit from a membership of UCAN? Off the top of my head, I don't have a memory of the membership rates. It is a subscription service, but it's an annual subscription and it's pretty reasonable. Um, I really should have looked that up before I came on, shouldn't I? Oh well. Edit that bit out if you want to.
People can head to the UCAN website. All of the information's there.
Yeah.
And do you have to be a member to come to something like the conferences, or is there a separate rate for that for people that aren't members?
Because we believe in the value of membership and the network, we ask that you're a member before you come to conference. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Brilliant.
So you'd be talking probably um, less than £25 per person to become a member anyway. I'm going to look these rates up now because I'm showing my ignorance, aren't I?
They're
You keep
very,
talking and I'll
very
find out.
reasonable, very reasonable
Thank
rates.
you.
And as part of that as well, you get the access to the small groups and the round tables. And we'll continue to talk about some of those things as well and the benefits that they prove.
Yeah, so I found it. £35 a year for a church administrator in a non-managerial role. And then, hang on, how to become a UCAN member. To become a manager, it's £75 a year. So less than £1.50 a week to have access to all of those things. I would say that's worth it,
That's a bargain, I say.
isn't it?
Um, and yeah, so you get access to the conferences, which are really quite refreshing. There's an element of digging into, there's some of the sort of bigger um, kind of talks where they're talking about some of the big topics, but there's seminars as well where you can go in and talk about things specific to you. I found those great, and you touched upon the idea of worshiping together as well, and actually
Yeah.
just that sense that the whole conference isn't just talking about business or church. There's an opportunity for people to receive people that probably on a Sunday are in their churches, and even if they're in the congregation, they're probably maybe thinking, oh well, if this happens, I need to deal with that situation, or why hasn't the leaflets gone out in a particular place, or you
Yeah.
constantly got work mode on, but it's an opportunity to actually step back and worship together and not have those worries and stresses around you, which I found really quite freeing.
Yeah, I'm going to give a blurb off the website also for the conference, seeing as we're talking about it. So our conference is it's a cutting edge conference, and it's called Equip, Empowering Ourselves and Others for Mission. That's so often what we do in our role, isn't it? We're
Yeah.
there behind the scenes, making sure those with maybe an outward facing ministry are able to do what they do efficiently, effectively, legally, safely, and financially viably. So the question is, what does it mean to be equipped for church leadership and mission today? We're exploring leadership that helps us to grow, empowers teams, and enables mission. And the idea is when you've been there a couple of days, you will leave strengthened, ready to inspire your team and make mission a reality in your church. Well, if that isn't worth going to as part of our role, I don't know what is.
And I'd say that's an accurate reflection as well of certainly the conferences I've been to. Actually, that you go through different stages, don't you, in ministry where perhaps you're working quite effectively, or you're approaching elements of burnout, or maybe you're kind of in a
Mm.
slightly quieter period of ministry and you're kind of in a slight recovery period. But wherever you are in those stages, um, it's important to take that time out to actually reflect over the past year or the past season, and think about that time ahead, and that really gives you that opportunity to do that.
And I suppose if you think about it, your colleagues in church would get to go to conferences or leadership training and things like that. This is real investment of your time in your own spiritual well-being. It's not a conference about spreadsheets, which is what my church pastor thought it was the first year I told him I was going. No, we're not going to discuss spreadsheets. We're actually going to worship. We're going to pray together. We're going to study the Bible together. We're going to have a really good time in God's presence and in each other's company. But then there are seminars, so you will get to see some of the really useful other providers out there. You might want to go to a seminar on building. You might want to go to building management. We've had people there. I think we've got one this year on AI, the use of AI that will help us in our workplace. So there's always good stuff there, plenty to choose from. We usually hear there weren't enough seminars. We wanted to go to so many of them. They were too difficult to choose from.
Yeah, the choice is incredible, and also the people that are delivering those seminars
Mm,
are experts in that field.
yeah.
They're really bringing something incredible to it. So yeah, it's a brilliant opportunity. And also just talking about then that some of the local regional groups as well. I know um, my regional group, we're meeting up in a couple of weeks' time, and then what an encouragement that is as well on a smaller level, more regularly to be
Mhm.
meeting up and talking about sometimes they're issues that are affecting us more locally, or perhaps it's just a time of encouragement and prayer, and it's great that that's part of the UCAN ethos as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it started as a network for administrators. So the idea was, local groups, etc. We have tried to do it alternate ways, but there is no, um, there's no alternative, is there, to meeting in person? I know we can do things online, but it's not the same.
No, absolutely. And then I guess the other element for us to dive into, and this is something I haven't made best use of, but is the round table discussions and some of those that happen online. And there was one, I believe, was it yesterday? There was a round table yesterday
There was a round table yesterday. Well, I don't know when this podcast's going out, but it was yesterday for me when we're talking about it
for
today. Yeah.
recording. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So we did the I thought I was speaking about mission enabling governance. Okay, which is a topic I teach on quite a lot. When I got my title, it was Shepherds and Stewards, How to Manage the Relationship Between Church Leaders,
Yes.
which was a brilliant conversation because we were able to talk. So the way the roundtable works is we'll have a 10-minute there'll be a spiritual input, and then separately you will have a guest speaker or an internal speaker, whoever. We do 10 minutes of input, 10 to 15 minutes of input, and then a breakout room where you could perhaps discuss what you've just heard, another 10, 15 minutes of input, and then a final breakout room, and then a bit of a wrap up at the end of what have people learned, how's it been helpful. So we looked at, first of all, what the difference is between sort of spiritual responsibility and the legal responsibility. So quite often you might come across a tension between, for example, trustees and elders, or PCC and the vicars, or whatever it is. And quite often that's because of the difference in roles and difference of responsibilities. and not understanding the odd, the other person's roles and responsibilities. So, for example, a pastor or a minister might see an opportunity and think, we've got to do this now. Whereas an ops manager or a trustee might say, yes, but have you checked out safeguarding? Is it sustainable? Is it viable? Can we afford it? Etc. So you thinking from a different perspective. So we looked at, how do we, if we're involved in role and task, which so many of us are in terms of our operational roles, can we lift our heads up and see how does this fit with the bigger vision? Are we enabling ministry to happen? So if we can do that, but then also to help those with the visionary responsibility and the spiritual responsibility to understand, yes, I know you want to do that event tomorrow, but you're asking me to get 500 volunteers and 26 new styles of t-shirts and all the social media out by tonight. It's quite a lot to do, so can you help me, or can you give me an idea of how to do it? Or, we don't want to be saying no all the time. We want to say, well, yes, you can, but these are some of the things you need to think about. So that was the first section. The second section, we then looked at 5 different fault lines where there might be a tension. What would create that tension? And then personally, what can we do about that? What's our part in helping, whether it's to understand somebody else's role differently, or helping to educate, or not in a patronizing way, but just in a, actually, I need to understand where you're coming from, and the weight that you're carrying as a pastor or a minister is very different to the operational role that I hold. Not not different in terms of rank order of priority, but actually the spiritual responsibility can sit in tension with the legal or the operational responsibilities. And there has to be a healthy relationship between the two, because that way the church can be healthy and ministry can happen and happen well.
That's such a important conversation to have, I think.
Mm.
And I think there's probably a lot of people listening that have felt that tension, certainly at some point, if not in a current situation. Um, what would you encourage someone that was maybe feeling in that position, that they're trying to sort of balance those sort of tensions within a church? What would be your encouragement to them?
And encouragement. So, from an encouragement point of view, God's placed you where you are, and you have skills and gifts that God has given to you to do your role. And that might mean that you have to sort of wade in there and say, we haven't thought about the safeguarding, or what about health and safety? But just to remember that God's given you those skills and gifts for the purpose of ministry, for the purpose of ultimately discipling people. So join the dots from, you're not just laying out the chairs, you're actually creating a space for somebody to come into the presence of God and meet Jesus. So if we can always be linking those together with mission and vision, and just take a little step back and think, I know my responsibility might be health and safety, or it might be finance or whatever. Well, God knows that. And He gave me those skills. And how can I have grace towards the people who are seeing their spiritual responsibility as being really important? They don't think about health and safety. Okay, that is your job. So if we start with a yes, we can, and how can I help you make that happen, rather than a no, you can't because you haven't thought about X, Y, Z, that's just a slight shift in mindset. We get to the same goal, but if I can understand what it is the pastor is trying to achieve, and they can understand from me what it's going to take in order to get there, it's about really good communication, isn't it? Really good relationship, really good communication. And then, if that vision is from God, it's going to happen. It's our privilege to enable it to happen, rather than our job to make sure it gets done. Does that make sense?
No,
Bit
that
of a
makes a lot of
difference there.
sense. Yeah, absolutely. It's that almost that kingdom mindset, isn't it? And actually looking
Totally.
at the bigger thing. And I know in my role there'll be a big exciting opportunity on the horizon, and then ticking in the back of my head, I'm like, oh my word, how are we going to make this happen?
Mm.
How are we going to resource this? How are we going to organize this? But I guess I'm encouraged by the way that God enables that, and he's able to use the resources that we do have, and what we dedicate to him. So I think that's one of the encouragements, and one of the great privileges of working in the fields that we work in.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I know you're incredibly busy, Penny, so thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for sharing about UCAN. And of course, if this sounds like something that anyone listening wants to get involved with or wants to learn more about, head over to the UCAN website and get in touch with the team. I'm sure they'd love to talk to you. And
Brilliant.
I hope it all goes well at the conference, Penny.
I'm sure it will. I'm sorry you can't be with us this year.
Oh, I'm gutted to not make it this year, but yes, I trust that it will be well, and I look forward to hearing about it when it's happened.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Bless you, Penny. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and I'll see you very soon.
Thank you.